So in my last video yesterday, I pretty much broke down how Sandrone's kit works, as well as what her best teammates are most likely going to be. But because we didn't get all like the damage formula stuff for Stellar Conduct yesterday, as well as not having C0 gameplay yesterday, I wasn't really able to calculate Sandrone's team performance. But we kind of have all of those things now. Hello there, Flip here, and today we're going to be talking all about Sandrone once again, going over all the details we were missing from the last video, and then we can finally show my Sandrone calcs towards the end of this video and evaluate how good she's going to stack up in the meta. But before we do that, as always, if at any points during the video you are entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin meta, and I'll try to keep you updated. Shout out to all my lovely channel members, I really appreciate your support, it means the world to me. I've been posting too quickly back to back, so I don't have anything funny to say this time, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. And there's no sponsor for today's video, so let's just get right into it. I already went over Sandrone's kit in full detail in my last video, but to summarize the important points, she's a cryo on-field DPS, and most of her damage is going to be centered around her charge attacks that you're able to cast via her summon Fogio. Sandrone doesn't have a special resource, so you can use this charge attack whenever, but in return using the charge attack will cause Fogio to overheat, which makes the charge attack weaker, and the ways to get Fogio out of the overheat state is via not using the charge attack, or by using Sandrone's elemental skill, which does some extra cryo damage, and is able to completely remove Fogio's overheat. And then Sandrone just has a generic DPS burst that does both cryo and stellar cryo damage, with her passives just enhancing her damage even more. Now for things we have more information on, because we have C0 gameplay now, for starters, the beam she fires is a C6 exclusive. Her base charge attack is more like Chaska's charge attacks, but with a much faster windup, and she's going to be able to fire 3 charge attack blasts before overheating, and her charge attack and skill do perfectly combo into each other, so you can pretty much loop it for as long as you want. And then the only other details that weren't in my last video are regarding the stellar field, as we now know what it does in more depth. So as stated before, when you trigger Stellar Conduct, it will create a field that buffs your characters, and this field has 3 levels depending on how many cryo or electro hits you deal. I'll put the values up on screen because I'm not reading all of that, but basically if you get 10 hits within the 3-second window, you will get a 38 team-wide cryo and electro damage bonus. Something missing from the Stellar Conduct direct damage formula that is in the Lunar Crystallize and Lunar Charge damage formulas is that their multipliers are just times by 3 and 1.6 respectively, and it looks like you get that multiplier by leveling up your stellar field, and it goes up to 1.9, which is stronger than Lunar Crystallize but weaker than Lunar Charged, and I think that's actually a pretty interesting gimmick. The only issue is getting 10 electro or cryo hits is going to be pretty hard every 3 seconds. When Sandrone's on field, it actually isn't that much of an issue. It's just that once Sandrone leaves the field, a lot of the electro and cryo characters she synergizes with don't have that frequent electro or cryo hits, so their damage is going to drop off a bit when Sandrone leaves the field, and that is something I guess can be remedied by a future electro or cryo support. And speaking of supports, before I show the results for my Sandrone calculations, I just want to say thank you to everyone who designed Sandrone. My heart goes out to the voice actors, the directors. Sandrone's numbers are kind of bad right now. Normally I would just show them, but I know that's going to cause a lot of doom posting, so if you don't skip ahead, I'm going to explain why her numbers most likely look the way they do. I think since Escoffier, Genshin had the strategy of releasing the dedicated support before the DPS. It's why we had Escoffier and then Skirk, Inefa and then Flins, Llama and then Nefer, and so on. And also usually the DPSs would be leading their region, and then they have all the tools to support them, and they get the new support sets, the new craftables, and so on. But the only thing Sandrone has right now is her DPS set. She doesn't really have any 5-star or 4-star support made with her in mind. You can technically say the buffed characters, but I'm not really counting that, as even with that you're still missing things like the support sets and craftables, and Sandrone currently has a 4th slot issue going on. So yeah, so for the numbers I'm about to show, this is like if they released Flins without Aino, without Inefa, without the Silken Moon set, and without his craftable. Understood? Alright, let's carry on. I wanted to look at a team that takes the buffed units in mind, so my first thoughts obviously led me to the Cryo Sustains, and Yai due to how crazy her buffs were, and then I just slapped Nicole on this team as she's a team-wide buffer, which benefits both Sandrone and Yai's damage, and also Sandrone does have some wind up before she starts doing her powerful charge attacks, so a lot more of her damage is coming out after those first 3 seconds, so Nicole's awkward delayed buff doesn't really hinder her at all. And Nicole needs no energy and takes very little field time, so she's very easy to slot into these teams, and she also doesn't apply Pyre to mess with the Stellar Conduct reaction. The only awkward thing about Nicole is that she doesn't really have an artifact set on this team. Bursting with her and having to build around its energy requirements is a DPS loss, and also with how early she's cast in rotations, she wouldn't really buff Sandrone that much with it anyways. She can't use her set because that requires 2 Hexerai, and Sandrone doesn't care that much about damage bonus anyways, and things like Tenacity doesn't work because she has no all-field hits, leaving her to just stat pad with 2-piece attack, even though that says Gladiators. Speaking of which, sorry for the tangent, I posted the raw sheets to Twitter and a lot of people said they kind of liked it more than me making infographics. So I'll be going with the style for this video, but just tell me which one you prefer and I can adjust. These ones are technically easier to make too, as I'm just screenshotting the sheet. But TLDR, Nicole is good. The reason why Yai is good is for one, she gives a team-wide 40% Stellar Conduct buff, with her C1, which is free due to the Constellation event. And also, she's doing nearly as much damage as Sandrone. Like, they actually fed Yai crack with these new changes. This is basically a dual DPS team, and another reason why Nicole is so good here. And another reason why Chi-Chi is so good here, as she offers a team-wide 50% stellar reaction buff without any constellations. She's also going to be a very comfortable sustain, and she's also able to comfortably hold tenacity. Her team-wide buffing is why she's better than Diona, who only buffs Sandrone's damage, and also Sandrone can be played in sub 20-second rotations. Diona forcing 20-second rotations means you have to do something else with Sandrone, in which case the best way I found is just by casting Sandrone's burst every rotation to fill in downtime, and Diona being able to funnel all her particles to Sandrone makes this quite easy, but the burst is sadly going to miss the EM buff. It still does a very respectable amount of damage though. But to my surprise, do you guys want to know who ends up being better than both Chi-Chi and Diona, even with their stellar buffs? Introducing Escoffier. Her minor red shredding does go a decent way, on top of her damage being buffed by Nicole also being quite decent, and because Nicole is on the team, Escoffier doesn't really need to burst to sustain the team, so she can spec all into her damage. So yeah. It is only really a minor difference from the cryo sustain, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. I just think it's really funny. And regarding anyone who has Chi-Chi constellations, Chi-Chi doesn't do enough damage with her burst to warrant it being worth it. So C1 and C2 are mostly negligible, and then Chi-Chi C6 forces her to burst every rotation to gain value from it, which does require her to build a bit of energy, which does nerf her stats. But ultimately, even with the slight rotation time increase, Chi-Chi C6 ends up being a 10% team DPS increase over C0, and the thing I find interesting is that for Sandrone's damage, it's a 24% personal damage increase. It's just that since Sandrone isn't like an overwhelming majority of the team's damage, its 24% increase to her doesn't really reflect the best team-wide, but it is still a pretty powerful constellation regardless. So if you do have a C6 Chi-Chi, she's the de facto best cryo slot. It's just kind of sad that C1 to C5 Chi-Chi is essentially the same character. Now from the Sandrone, Chi-Chi, and Yai core, there are a few flex slots I wanted to test. Nicole did end up giving me the best results as I said prior, but options like a C6 Beidou on Noblesse and Shalonen with Instructors really aren't far behind at all. Beidou's damage still kind of sucks ass in single target, but because she offers a 200 EM buff to the active character on top of her resistance shredding to Cryo and Electro, as well as being a good Noblesse holder, all these things together still make her pretty competitive. And then with Shalonen, it's Shalonen. She offers the most comfortable access to dual res shredding, and you can just slap Instructors on her to buff the team. And I haven't calculated Sucrose yet, but she shouldn't be too far behind. But there is actually a reality where she's worse than Shalonen here, unlike how she dominated in teams like Lunar Charged. Electro and Hydro auras coexist on enemies, so setting up double swirls with Sucrose was very easy. Superconduct teams are kind of just going to be fighting for application, so there's a very likely chance you miss a swirl, and even in cases you don't, as you can see, the damage between Sandrone and Yai is pretty split, so only shredding one element is still kind of going to suck, and why Shalonen does have a slight advantage here. Regardless though, Sucrose is still going to be a great option. I just wanted to point that out. Those are all the flex options I covered for this core, so I just want to please say, do not pull for Nicole just for Sandrone. Yes, she's very good for Sandrone and is technically best in slot, at least with the knowledge we have now, but for one, there may be more rotation optimizations we haven't made where the other flexes catch up, and Nicole is also by far the most replaceable in this team. As you can see, even someone like Beidou is pretty close, and maybe even better in AoE situations. Specifically to 2-target AoE situations. And Nicole also doesn't have an artifact set in this team. Again, it's very likely she gets replaced by someone else, more so than the other units on this team. Speaking of which, I guess this is where we talk about the DPS loss from not having Yai. If you don't have Yai, the next best option is running Beidou as a solo unit, at least from what I've looked at. Even though Beidou's energy economy has gotten better, solo Electro Beidou with no Electro Resonance is still going to need like 190 ER, along with 2 other Favoniuses on your team. And the team performance, again, maybe this will develop more in the beta, or we don't have her optimal rotations and combos down, but she's kind of really dependent on Yai right now, and you lose a decent amount of damage in trying to play other teams. Once again, Sandrone is releasing without a ton of things that other DPSs nowadays usually have, like a dedicated support, a general support, and she's also missing her supportive set. So like how Varka, Flint, and Nefer did get massive DPS jumps, I expect Sandrone to honestly have the biggest DPS jump out of any DPS over the span of 7.0, even though she's currently looking to be very underwhelming right now. Of course, I'll continue to calculate and update you with Sandrone information that we get over the beta, and if she gets any better, so make sure to stick around for that. But I don't really think I have anything else to say for today's video, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on Sandrone, as I would love to hear it and I respond to almost every single comment. Channel members, thank you so much for your continued support, it means the world to me. Thank you to everyone else for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.